I'd like to call the January 4th, 2023 City Council meeting to order. There we go. Sorry, I would like to call the January 4th, 2023 City Council meeting to order. If you're able, please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Vice Mayor Baisden?
Here.
Mayor Gabriel is absent this evening. Councilmember Dothett?
Here.
Councilmember Sonart?
Here.
Councilmember Nackstead?
Here.
Councilmember Askin?
Here.
And Councilmember Winger.
Present.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Council, before we get to agenda approval, I'd like to bring to your attention a lay-down material. Request item G7, special use permit to Beacon Occupational Health and Safety and exclusive lease space in the Alaska Fire Training Center. Councilmember Nackstead.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden. I move for approval of the agenda with the add item G7 and request to remove item 5 under new business, ordinance number 3332, 2023 from the consent agenda and request unanimous consent.
Thank you.
I'll second
Councilmember Askin. Thank you. Second. Unanimous consent was asked for. Any objections? Seeing no objection, agenda with the changes have been approved. Next, we have the consent agenda. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Nackstead.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden. I move for approval of the modified consent agenda, request unanimous consent.
I'll second.
Thank you for the second. Any comments? Yes. Please read the consent. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Approval of the work session minutes of December 21st, 2022, brought to you by the city clerk. Approval of the regular meeting minutes of December 21st, 2022, brought to you by the city clerk. New business, action approval, bills to be ratified, brought to you by the administration. Action approval, non-objection to the renewal of a golf course seasonal liquor license to Griffin Golf Course LLC, DBA Kenai Golf Course, license number 5788. Brought by the city clerk. Action approval and non-objection to the transfer of a controlling interest of a beverage dispensary and restaurant designation permit liquor license to G&P Inc., doing business as the White Moose, license number 204. City clerk. Ordinance number 3331, 2023, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the general fund, police department, and accepting grant from the United States Department of Justice and Alaska Municipal League Joint Insurance Association for the purchase of ballistic vests, brought to you by the administration, and that is your consent agenda.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Are there any public comments on any of the consent agenda items just read by the clerk? Seeing none? Pleasure, Council. Did we want to remove an item from the consent agenda? We just did that. Thank you. Unanimous consent was requested. Are there any objections? Seeing none? Consent agenda is approved. Public comments. There are no public comments. Unscheduled public comments. We now have unscheduled public comments. Are there any members from the public who would like to speak on any item not appearing on the agenda? Please come forward and give your name and address.
My buddy John there, he thought he was going to say something, but he's going to figure it out another day. Marion Nelson, Kenai Art Guild, Art Center rather. Tomorrow night is the opening for 2 shows at the Art Center. Typically it's 1, but this time we have 2, both in the main gallery as well as in the jail room at the very back of the Art Center, and that will be Anne Lillian Schell's work. She died in, I can't talk about this, I'll start crying, God damn it. Anyway, she was a great fiber artist, and so her work is very textural and colorful and very, very interesting, to say the least. And, sorry, it's my tear ducts, you know. Then in the main gallery is Diane Dunn's work, which is very different. It's journaling, and lots and lots and lots of journals. They're on the floor. She's got a grid taped off with red thin stripe. There's a whole bunch of smaller pieces on the wall that are in shadow box kind of boxes, and on and on. It's one of those things that I can't describe adequately or can't do it justice at all. And so they'll both be very, very, very interesting shows for the public. So the reception tomorrow night is 5 to 7. There'll be some incredible food. And then the highlight of the whole building right now, as you probably saw in the paper, is redoing the floor, the cement floor in the main gallery and the gift gallery room. And the paper was wrong, or the information was wrong, that they got that the back, with the jail room, for lack of a better name, had carpet in there, which is not true. It has never had carpet in there. So anyway, we found out some things when we got rid of the nasty carpet that had been in there for a long time, certainly, that where people in the past had drilled into the cement floor and put in bolts and whatever to put up stud walls for whatever they were partitioning off at that time. That is, of course, different than the cement that was laid down to begin with. And the finishing as over the coloring that's on the floor, there's some differences there. It's like, well, we've got some history here now. We had a lot of it, and now we've got a little bit more. So it makes it more colorful in another way. And for those of us who've been involved with that building for a long time, it's definitely a look back in time to see this is what these people did then. Oh, there maybe was a wall here that we wouldn't have guessed, because that hasn't been there for a long, long time. So anyhow, it's fun. It's certainly more attractive. It's shiny. We're asking people to take their cleats off at the door, if possible. And we'll go from there. And look forward to seeing as many of you as possible to come over and enjoy those shows, and they'll be up for the month. And then next month is a metal-focused show where things will be made out of metal, and a lot of really different things, really different. So, any questions from anybody?
Thank you, Ms. Nelson, for all that you do. We really appreciate it.
Sure.
It's great to have you here. And
I want to thank the city too, and Scott specifically, for getting Cook Street really cleared out on both sides, because it was a monster in terms of parking space for people tomorrow. He really, really did us a good job.
thank you. That's great to hear. Any questions for Ms. Nelson? Thank you. Thank you again.
Yep.
Any other public comments? Anybody remotely? Oh, here we go. Please come forward and give your name and address for the record, please.
Okay, my name is Michael Sean. My address is 104 North Gill Street, apartment B109, here in Kenai.
Say that again, John? John what?
My name is Michael Sean. My address is 104 North Gill Street, apartment B109. Okay, will that be enough?
Thank you. Yes.
My question is regarding, I volunteer at the Kenai Senior Center. Some of you know this. My question is, I recently applied for a job there. I don't have the job, but if I were to get the job, I'm told I cannot volunteer there anymore. Is there a way to get around that? Signing a waiver of some sort to say that I wouldn't accept, I don't know, unprecedented award for, I'm not sure why they won't allow it. So I'm wondering if there's a way around getting that.
So Mr. Strawn, I'll let the city manager speak to it, and then maybe our attorney might want to have a comment also. So let's see what they have to say.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden. So actually, we had a meeting at the Senior Center, Mr. Eubank and I did today, and this topic came up. And actually, our HR director Christine Cunningham is working on a solution to this. She expects to have some type of answer for folks in about 6 to 8 weeks. There's a lot of different things, boxes we have to check to work through the process, but we are working on it currently. We're going to try to get an answer for folks in 6 to 8 weeks.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I guess that's it then.
Attorney Bloom, anything to add? Is that good? So Mr. Strana, and just from my past history, I know that the issue, when I was a fire chief, we had volunteers. And once you get an employee relationship, it makes it a little bit difficult because whenever we look at record keeping and whether we're using you as a volunteer or as a paid employee, I think a lot of times it can be misconstrued that we may use you more for volunteer time and not pay you for the time that we should be paying you. So it kind of puts the employer in a position. That's my history dealing with that type of situation.
All right. I knew that might have been one thing, and that's what I was wondering if we could sign like a waiver saying, you know, there won't be any lawsuit or something that would come of a misunderstanding like that.
No, thank you for your comments, and we got the city manager working on it with his staff, so thank you.
Vice Mayor Basin.
Oh, sorry. Yes, Councilmember Winger.
Michael, I just want to say thank you for volunteering. I know when I go in there, I see you almost every time at the front desk. So I just want to say thank you for your commitment and then for applying for a position and still wanting to volunteer. So really, thank you for your commitment.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Seeing none remotely. That brings us to public hearings. The first public hearing before us tonight is ordinance number 3324, 2022, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the airport special revenue and airport improvements capital project funds, and authorizing the purchase of snow removal equipment. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Nackstad.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden. I move to enact ordinance 3324, 2022.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We have a second. Is there anybody in the general public that would like to speak to ordinance 3324, 2022? Seeing and hearing none, we'll bring it back. Maybe a synopsis from the city manager.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden. Actually, we've got Mr. Conway, airport manager, in the back room, and I'd since we have him here, he can go ahead and give us a summary of what this ordinance does.
Through the Vice Mayor, thank you. I don't want to speak over Mr. Curtin. This is the capital project for the LaRue snow blower, and the cost increase on this was due to, are we looking at 2022?
This is about your new snow blower. The new equipment.
I'm sorry. No, this equipment is the tow behind brooms to replace the existing super brooms that we already have. These tow behind brooms include plows, so the efficiency and the manpower required to clear the runways and the taxiways would be significantly decreased, as well as the number of pieces of equipment to accomplish the same. We're asking to forward fund this equipment because the lead time last quoted was 365 days. That is expected to increase to over 400 days, and we're looking to replace this equipment as soon as possible and have it available for the next winter season.
Thank you, Mr. Conway. Any discussion from council? Mr. Nackstad, Councilman Nackstad.
Thank you. I'm curious. There's a photo of what I think we're buying, and I want to question: is that about what it's going to look like? It's in our packet on page 7, and that looks like a big step up from the broom that you have currently. I was just curious about the operation part of it. You know, just if that's the basic unit, and if the operation is going to be greatly improved with this new unit over what you have.
Mr. Conway, through the city manager, go ahead.
Thank you, through the Vice Mayor. Thank you, Councilmember Nackstad. That's correct. This is essentially what will be delivered. The efficiencies are included in the wider broom, the wider plow, additional efficiencies are that the plow can be dropped and loaded back onto the piece of equipment, and the cradling broom will narrow that piece of equipment. It'll provide about 10 feet of space on both ends when it's parked inside the heated storage, and because it does cradle, they can be parked side by side, taking up essentially less space than other pieces of equipment that take up space and are really cumbersome to move in and out of the current warm storage facility.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, clerk, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Dockett.
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart.
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted.
Yes?
Councilmember Askin.
Yes.
Councilmember Winger.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Baisden.
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes. Ordinance 3324, 2022 is enacted.
Thank you. That brings us to item D2, ordinance number 3325, 2022, accepting and appropriating donations to the Kenai Community Library for the purpose of program supplies and equipment from the administration. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I move to enact ordinance 3325, 2022.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councilmember Askin. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance 3325, 2022? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council. Any comments? Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'd like to make the amendment that's in our packet on page 11. It's two-part, so I'll make the whole thing as we go. I move to add a new fourth whereas section that reads, whereas the library received a $300 donation from a community member to use as library staff sees fit, and then also amend sections 1 and 2 by replacing the amount of funds being accepted and appropriated from $2,700 to $3,000. Request unanimous consent.
I'll second.
Thank you. We have a second, and unanimous consent has been asked. Any opposition? Seeing none, then that brings us back to the discussion of the amended ordinance. Any discussion? Seeing none, clerk, call the roll.
Councilmember Sonart.
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted.
Yes?
Councilmember Askin.
Yes.
Councilmember Winger.
Yes.
Vice Mayor Baisden.
Yes.
Councilmember Dothett.
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes. Ordinance number 3325, 2022 as amended is enacted.
Thank you. Next, we have item D3, ordinance 3326, 2022, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the General Fund Parks, Recreation, and Beautification Department, and authorizing an increase to the Multipurpose Facility Management Service purchase order to Redline Sports for additional ice maintenance service brought to us by the administration. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Askin.
I move that we enact ordinance 3326-2022.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Councilmember Naxted. Been seconded. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to make comment on ordinance 3326, 2022? Seeing none and seeing nobody online, we'll bring it back to council for discussion. Councilmember Winker.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden. I have a question for Mr. Ostrander. Maybe you can give some clarification. I had a constituent reach out and ask this, and I was not able to provide any of these questions. So some of the questions that were asked was, do these teams that are using the ice, are they paying a fee to do so? And then they want to know ultimately why we're paying a $40,000 bill if there's a fee collected, and maybe you could break down why and explain that.
Thank you, City Manager
Thank-
Ostrander.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden, Councilmember Winger. So the ICE, there is a fee schedule in the adopted budget that establishes the rate that the city charges for ICE use. So yeah, the youth programs are paying for the ICE utilization. The reason that we need an additional $40,000 is that the city does appropriate money to operate the facility. However, those operational costs are offset by those user fees. The reason that we're appropriating an additional $40,000 is because when we originally adopted the budget last year, we didn't anticipate putting in ice as early as we did. And council may recall that the sports center in Soldotna was going to be closed for maintenance last summer. We were planning on being closed for the entire summer, but the hockey youth community came to us and requested that we put the ice in 2 months early. We were able to accommodate that. Mr. Curtin's crew was able to get the work done earlier than we had anticipated, so we were able to get it in 2 months early. But since we've extended the season essentially by 2 months, we need this additional money to pay for those operational costs. But yes, all the users in the MPF pay the hourly rate for the utilization of the facility. What our appropriation pays for is we have a concessionaire that runs the facility, and we pay that concessionaire to provide for maintenance of the ice, Zamboni, the ice, open and close the facility, that sort of thing. So that's what these funds pay for.
Thank you for that. So in the end, the overall question to me after being able to outline that better for him is, did we collect at least $40,000 from the user groups to pay for that additional 2 months that we opened, or did we open that to them, to work with them and then take a loss on that?
To the city manager.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden, Councilmember Winger. So when we agreed to enter this agreement with the youth, with those youth organizations, we actually calculated the minimum number of ice hours that would need to be rented for those 2 months to cover our costs. And we had them commit in writing to the city that they would at least rent it for that minimum number of hours. And they did meet that requirement in those 2 months. So you'll see that actually the projected ice sales, that our rentals are going to exceed the projected these maintenance costs. So we actually see a net, in actual utilization of the facility, we see a net to the city when everything shakes out.
Thank you for that.
Any other discussion? Councilmember Neckstead.
Probably was just answered, but when I see round numbers, it always, so it's $20,000 a month. To establish the $40,000, is that based on the previous months and it's $20,000 a month and we just projected that out, or is it the same or something different?
City Manager Ostrander.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden, Councilmember Nackstead. So the $40,000 at this point is an estimate because it's a projection based on historical averages. So in all likelihood, we won't need the entire $40,000, which is why you see that round number. We spent, Mr. Walker and actually Tyler Best and I and Terry kicked this around for a long time because there's a lot of nuances in this facility and how those costs are incurred. One of the biggest costs is actually putting in the ice. And so we put the ice in this year. That consumes a bunch of this maintenance cost. But I guess to answer your question, this is a projection based on historicals. And adding this 2 months, we think that this $40,000 is going to be sufficient to cover us for the end of the year. We certainly hope so. Otherwise, you're going to see another appropriation coming back in front of council, which we want to avoid if at all possible.
Thank you.
Thank you.
City Council Winger.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden. Just one more follow-up, Mr. Ostrander. Are our fees for usage equivalent or somewhere competitive with the sports center? I know our facilities aren't quite, the same caliber, but where do our fees line up compared to the sports center's usage fees?
City Manager.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden, Councilmember Winger. I think Brad probably has those exact numbers. I know we are cheaper than the sports center, and for the reasons that you just mentioned, but Brad, do you happen to have those numbers off the top of your head?
We charge $165, which we raised from $145. Soldotna they have kind of a tiered. So $220 is, they have a prime hour, which I don't have that number in front of me, but I think it might be $245 now. But that's the difference between us and them.
Thank you very much for that.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Nackstead?
Yes.
Councilmember Askin?
Yes.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Vice Mayor Baisden?
Yes.
Councilmember Dothett?
Yes.
And Councilmember Sonart.
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes. Ordinance number 3326, 2022 is enacted.
Thank you. That brings us to item D4, ordinance number 3327, 2022, increasing and decreasing estimated revenues and appropriations to reallocate grant funds previously appropriated for construction of a pedestrian bridge in the Kenai Municipal Park to playground equipment replacement at the softball green strip, brought to us by the administration. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Nextad.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I move to enact ordinance 3327, 2022.
Second.
Thank you. We have a second. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance 3327, 2022? Seeing none and seeing no one online?
No hands raised.
No one online? We'll bring it back to council for discussion. Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Bayston. I have a question for administration. I believe, just maybe let us know how we got here between the two projects. My understanding was when we did a land donation to the Boys and Girls Club, they had stated on record that they would, support this project. It would be a great way to partnership. So I'm just wondering where that fell, so that this project's falling completely, because I thought we had the support on this from the Boys and Girls Club.
Thank you, for the city manager.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Bayston, Councilmember Winger. So during the discussions with the Boys and Girls Club, the primary concern from the city's perspective was the transfer of ownership from the care center to the Boys and Girls Club. We wanted to make sure that we were able to maintain an easement on the west side of their property to support the construction of this trail. Not necessarily related to this pedestrian bridge, but once we build the bridge, we need to be able to complete the trail on the west side of that property and out towards the highway. So they're still, to my knowledge, fully supportive of an easement, but at this point, without construction of the bridge, that easement isn't immediately necessary. So I believe that was the discussion with the Boys and Girls Club, was specifically about that easement, not necessarily the pedestrian bridge. I would just add that, when we initially estimated the cost of this project, we hadn't gotten our eyes on this area like we have now, and both I and Mr. Walker and actually Chief Pryor went down there and looked at this location, and it was evident after we looked at it that it was a more significant structure is needed to cross that stream than what $86,000 would have paid for, which is why you see this ordinance in front of us. It's still a priority we'd like to see done. I know it was something that council was supportive of. It's just that the amount of money available in this grant fund just wasn't sufficient to construct it.
Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Bayston and Mr. Ostrander for that. The next question is for $86,000. I mean, we heard in our work session from Kenaitze, that's not going to buy us very much. And that park's playground equipment is expensive. So for this $86,000, what are we going to see for improvements there? How many pieces of equipment are we talking about? And then my only request would be is, we may be saying this is old and outdated equipment. However, it's, our park on 4th was taken out with a promise we'd get one back, and we would be happy to take this old equipment to have something back in turn. So I know we're saying this is old and outdated, but as we remove things from other park areas, we're not putting stuff in. Is there a chance that this old equipment could be moved to that location as well? Again, what are we going to get for $86,000?
City Manager Ostrander.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Bayston, Councilmember Winger. So I'd probably ask Mr. Walker to speak to specifically what he thinks we can get on the green strip, and also, Brad, if you could talk a little bit about whether or not any of this equipment that we are removing could be repurposed, if possible, or if it's exceeded its useful life. So if you could speak to both of those items.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Bayston. Thank you, Councilmember Winger. We will be able to replace in structure but different design the same amount of equipment that's there, just up to date and up to standard and up to code. The hardest part to this is actually finding surfacing that meets certified playground material. There's a few ways to go about that. The most cost-effective way is engineered fiber, which is engineered wood chips. And then rubber mulch, tile, there's a lot of those, but the engineered fiber is what we have, and that is very difficult to find. And so as it stands now, for this grant, we can basically replace a new one that's modern and same size even. To answer your question about taking out what's at the green strip and moving to 4th Street, this playground will be 30 years old in a couple years. It has got a lot of issues. Parts are hard to find for it. In fact, it's obsolete in a lot of things. And how they graded playgrounds in 1995 is not how we do it now. And so there's choke points, there's, you know, whether a bolt sticks out too far, whether you hit your head in certain areas, whether there's, you know, how far the gaps are. And so those things are profoundly different than what they are now. I would not support moving that playground anywhere because it's spent 30 years doing a great job for the city of Kenai, and I wouldn't want, and there's a liability factor that plays into that too. That's my 2 cents on that.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Mr. Reason. Just a follow-up question for Mr. Walker. Are you going to be presenting Parks and Recs and Council with the equipment that'll be purchased? I'm just having a hard time because I've looked through catalogs and seen what the expense is that we're going to be able to cover a complete full replacement and a resurfacing for $86,000. So are you going to be able to give some examples of the equipment that we'll be getting with that? And projected with shipping and everything that we won't be going over this $86,000 grant, because I hate to commit to something that's going to take $300,000 more.
Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Bazin. Thank you, Councilmember Winger. Absolutely. I've been in contact with 4 different vendors who are all able and capable to meet the budget that we have here. And I just spoke to the second to last one today. I have plans. Sincerely, the hardest part of this right now is the fiber. But we have a plan for that. It's just a matter of the minutia of it. But yes, I have half of it already put together.
Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councilmember Dothett.
With the fiber that's what's going underneath the playground. Is there a temporary option like wood chips that's acceptable or anything like that until we can find the supplies, or is there other options in a temporary scenario that we could use?
Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Bazin. Thank you, Councilmember Dothett. So currently what we have now is sand. Sand is the lowest standard that you can have. That would be an option. We would have to do sand over nothing. A lot of schools use pea gravel. That is also an option. So in the spirit of not doing something twice, our ultimate goal would be hopefully to find the fiber, because that's what we have at Muni Park and that's what we have at Beaver Creek. And and that they have shelf lives, like a lot of stuff. And so when we find that vendor, I would also factor in some, you know, I now know that like at this period of time, we're going to refresh Muni Park because you have to per the standards, and the same with Beaver Creek. If that is a non-point, then sand is an option, playground sand and pea gravel.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Dothett.
One more
Councilmember
question for the
Dothett.
staff is, I believe, was this going to be something you might be presenting for the chamber also on the 26th? Would you have something available for this?
Mr. Walker.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Bazin. Thank you, Councilmember Dothett. This would be something different, but
Okay, I just wasn't sure if I know the chamber's looking at donating for some funds for parks or something like that. It might be something we can help out.
But I would have no problem talking about engineered fiber for other parks too. So like, that's something to think about, actually. I never
Okay.
thought about that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Back to council. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please take the roll.
Councilmember Askin?
Yes.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Baisden?
Yes.
Councilmember Dothit?
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
And Councilmember Naxted.
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes. Ordinance number 3327, 2022 is enacted.
Thank you. That brings us to item D5, ordinance number 3328, 2022, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the airport snow removal equipment capital project fund to provide supplemental funding for the Kenai Municipal Airport snow blower and increasing the existing purchase order to Craig Taylor Equipment brought to us by the administration. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Askin.
I move we enact ordinance 3328-2022.
I'll second.
Thank you. The ordinance was second. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance 3328, 2022? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council for discussion. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I fully support this ordinance. The additional $18,000 for a total of $780,390 is going to be completely funded by the FAA in the end. So we're just forward funding, and we'll get our money back. And we'll have a great piece, we've got a great piece of equipment. So I'll be in support of this.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Baisden?
Yes.
Councilmember Dothit?
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted?
Yes?
Councilmember Askin?
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes. Ordinance 3328, 2022 is enacted.
Thank you. Next, we have item D6, ordinance number 3329, 2022, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the general and visitor center improvement capital project funds to provide supplemental funding for the roof replacement project brought to us by administration. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I move to enact ordinance 3329, 2022.
I'll second.
Thank you. The measure was seconded. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to speak to ordinance 3329, 2022? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council for discussion. Pleasure of council. Maybe I'll ask a question for the city manager, maybe just to give us an overview of what's taking place here.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden. So this is for the visitor center for the roof replacement project. Excuse me. Money was appropriated in, I think, the fiscal year 22 budget, and we attempted to actually construct this year. We put it out to bid late in the year, and the bid amounts were in excess of the money that we had appropriated. We also felt that the timing of the bid was such that delaying it to January, February of this year would be advantageous. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to put this back out to bid in this month or next month. The additional $100,000 here is based on a couple of things. One, we've seen an escalation in prices since we originally looked at this project and estimated it. We also, based on the bids that we received the first time we put this out, think that this additional money is going to be necessary to award the project, and we don't like to go out on the street with the project if we think that we don't have sufficient funds. We're hopeful that we don't need this entire $100,000, but to feel comfortable taking this back out to bid and knowing that we'll have an appropriate and sufficient amount of funds to construct the project, we're asking for an additional $100,000 in appropriation.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Well, Councilmember Sonart.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I'm just curious, what factors are you thinking that this time around with the second bid, or the second time of bidding, that it will become more competitive than it was 7 or 8 months ago? Because, I mean, we're all experiencing inflation in the last 6 months, so obviously you think it's going to be more competitive. What leads you to believe that?
City Manager Schrander.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden, Councilmember Sonart. So Mr. Curtin can expand on this if he'd like, but it's essentially the timing of bids on projects like this oftentimes are extremely important to get as competitive as bids as you possibly can. When we put this out to bid before, it was later in the year, and a lot of these contractors already had a full schedule, so they weren't that hungry for additional work. So that has a tendency to provide for not as competitive of a process. In January, February, most of these contractors do not have their work scheduled for the summer, so it is a more competitive period to put a project out to bid. So we're hoping that does create a better environment for bidding. And Mr. Curtin, I don't know if you have anything that you want to add to that.
Thank you, City Manager Ostrander. Yes, all I would add is, asphalt shingles are comprised, it's an oil-based product. Certainly with the prices of oil being what they were, it is an effect on buying materials and supply chain issues. And then we actually bid this in July, is when it went out the first time. And the majority of those contractors, with the short construction season that Alaska has, most of those guys are lining up their summer work in February, March, and April, to be honest with you. So once they know they have that core work for the summer, the prices that people tend to escalate as it gets later in the year. So that was our thinking. We're putting it out. My intent is to put it out if this passes tonight here, possibly as early as next week, just to be first on their schedule for May when the weather breaks. So we'll be a little earlier in the year is my hope. And oil prices have come down as well.
Okay, thank you. That answers my question.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Clerk, please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Baisden?
Yes.
Councilmember Dothett?
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
Councilmember Naxted?
Yes?
Councilmember Askin?
Yes.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes. Ordinance 3329-2022 is enacted.
That brings us to item D7, ordinance number 3330, 2022, increasing estimated revenues and appropriations in the general and recreation center improvement capital project funds to provide supplemental funding for the Kenai Recreation Center Improvements Project, brought to us by the administration. Pleasure of the council. Councilmember Naxted.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I move to enact ordinance 3330, 2022.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Ordinance was second. Is there anybody from the general public that would like to make a comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to council for discussion. Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden. I will be supporting this tonight, but reading through the memo with the additional needs, it said that there would be a future need for the facility that would bring this total to approximately $2.5 million. I will not be in favor of the additional $1 million in needs. We've committed to the needs for this project. However, I feel at this point we're at a pivotal point with this facility that we need to look at. Do we continue to put $2.5 million into a building that may not have the value? And for me personally, I don't feel that that is really a decision for us. I think that this is a decision for the people, and the people have to decide if they want us sticking $2.5 million into this 40-year-old building. And I right now will commit to finishing out the $1 million that we need for the roof and the HVAC system, but going forth in the scope, I would not be in support of the additional $1.5 million that would come up along the line. And I think that this should open up a discussion amongst this body and the people in our community to see what direction they really want us to continue to go.
Thank you for the discussion. Councilmember Naxted.
I just want to say I do appreciate Councilmember Winger's comments, but my opinion is, I'm going to support this ordinance, and anything future, I want to keep my options open, because it won't be just one project. It may be something else we need to do, and I may be in support of that. I don't know yet. I don't know what it is. So I will keep my options open, and I'll look forward to administration letting us know what the next needs might be and how we move forward.
Thank you. Maybe for the city manager or capital projects, maybe just kind of give the public the overview of what we think is going to happen here in the future with that memo, if you don't mind, maybe just expound on it a little bit.
Thank you, excuse me, Vice Mayor Baisden. I'd actually ask Mr. Curtin to talk about some of the additional issues at the facility that would require additional funding. I know he has identified a number of those that would need to be addressed.
Thank you, Mr. Curtin.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden, and through City Manager Ostrander. So I worded this memo intentionally for that, and I do struggle with this. These structures that are reaching 40 years old, they're not inexpensive to fix. I do believe and agree that the work that we're proposing to do has to be done to save the facility. I mean, doing the roof, we already have active leaks over there. Numerous air handling HVAC type equipment is failing or about to fail. And whether we keep the building or sell the building, I think you would have to do that in either case, really, to do that. I wanted to make a point about the additional $1 million because we are not addressing a lot of interior items with this project. So there's some water heaters. There's been some discussions on like locker rooms and flooring, refinishing a gymnasium floor and other interior type finishes, which likely do need to be addressed for the long term, if we're going to maintain and keep that facility for 20, 30 more years, if that's the goal, that I do feel we're going to have to spend that money if the intent is for us to keep that. So I just wanted to make a point of that. It's nothing to say that we have to do that, 12 months from now or anything, but I wanted you to be aware. When the dollars get to be this expensive, it's, for me, I feel like I'm walking a line here where is it worth it? Yes or not, and I don't disagree that it likely, I appreciate your folks' input on that, and frankly the community's, because I don't want to be the one making that decision or swaying you to make that decision. So that's why I brought it up that way. And happy to answer any other specific questions you might have on the facility.
Thank you, Mr. Curtin. If I could, back with the city manager, could you share some data with the public on how much the facility is being used? Do you have anything off the top of your head that you can share with us?
Thank you, Vice Mayor Vice Mayor Baisden, sorry about that. I actually did compile some information because I thought that might be of interest to council. I don't think you stole it. Oh, here it is. So I actually had Mr. Best put this information together today because I was interested. So for 2022, the estimated number of rec center visits was just under 53,000, so 52,893. 9,500 of that is teen center visits, and then 43,393 visits from the public. So it is a facility that's used extensively. Just for comparison purposes, I actually asked Katja Wolf to give me the numbers for the library for the same time period. So 53,000 at the rec, and the number at the library, she had an estimate, it was between 53 and 60,000 folks in the library during the same period, and then the senior center during the 2022 calendar year saw 21,000 visitors. So this facility sees significantly more traffic than the senior center, probably just slightly less than the library. So it is certainly a facility that is heavily utilized. So I appreciate the question.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll. I'm sorry, Councilmember Dothett.
Might be for staff or I'm not sure. Do we have an estimated value on the actual facility as it sits with the, I guess after the roof improvements? Do we have a rough idea on what the actual value is as it sits?
For the city manager.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden, Councilmember Dothett. I believe Mr. Eubank might have the exact replacement value that we have in the facility insured for. It's my understanding it's north of $7 million, but I don't know what the exact number is. Maybe Terry knows.
Yeah, thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden, Councilmember Dothett. I don't want to confuse the two numbers, though. So when we declare a value for insured purposes, it is for replacement of the facility. So if that facility was to burn down to the ground, total loss, This would represent the value that we're declaring on our insurance, and our insurance company is accepted to replace the existing facility 100% in its place. That value is about $7.4 million. I don't want that to be confused with what the building is worth, because we don't appraise our buildings. I wouldn't rely on borough assessment, because I don't think they spend a lot of time, right, appraising buildings that don't have any tax value. But, so they're two totally different numbers. That 7.4 million is the declared value for replacement with our insurance company.
Thank you. And I didn't know if that was something we could, if we come upon before we invest millions, possibly more into a building, it might be something to look at. What is the actual value of the building? Would be possibly getting an assessed value of it, paying somebody to actually give us an idea. Are we going to look into putting in $2 million plus dollars into something that's worth on the market value $2 million? Might be something to start considering. And I agree with what Councilmember Winger says. It might be something we start getting up there in those multi-million dollar range, that we might have to go to vote with the city or get in a public opinion on it to see if this is something they want to see us move forward with, and see if something they see fit is cost effectiveness or not. But I will be approving what we have for tonight for sure.
Thank you. Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden. I have a question for Mr. Ostrander. If this body decided to come back out for bond and have the people approve these additional expenses, would we be able to come back for the $1 million that we've put in now? And if this is something that we are looking at in hindsight in the future, is this something that we could bring forth to the people?
City Manager Ostrander.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden, Councilmember Winger. So just to make sure that I understand your question completely, well, let me start with, we certainly have the ability to go out for bond for improvements. It means that we're going to incur debt, we're going to sell those bonds, incur debt, and pay those off over time. We can do that to fund a construction project such as this. Similar, the bonded indebtedness, the only bonded indebtedness that the city has right now is the $2 million bond that we sold when we upgraded the library. So you could do something similar like this. That way you do get the vote of the people. They'd get to determine whether or not they want to incur debt. I think that your question was whether or not we could sell debt to pay us back for costs incurred now as well?
I guess my question is, instead of going out for bond for 1.5 million, would we be able to do the 2.5 million too? But I don't think we'd be able to retrodate back. But and I see Scott shaking his head no down there. It was just a question. I personally am not in favor of bonds. I'm just trying to look at what aspects we can get this in front of the people.
Attorney Bloom.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden, Councilmember Winger. I don't think we could do it directly to pay back the city, but you could get creative with it and bond $1 million for other capital improvement projects that essentially would alleviate the city's general fund need to pay those. There's ways to do it. It's not as straightforward, but I don't think we could repay ourselves.
Thank you.
Any further discussion?
Can I beat this one?
Councilmember Next.
Thank you. Are there grant possibilities generally for something like this, or is it, so we're talking about the future and worrying about that, so.
City Manager.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden, Councilmember Nackstead. I'm sure there are grant opportunities that are out there, to support park and recreation facilities and communities like this. I think our discussion earlier tonight with the Kenaitze tribe, they might be able to, they have access to grant funds that the city doesn't, so there is a possibility for partnership there as well. So it is a possibility.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Dothit?
Yes.
Councilmember Sonart?
Yes.
Councilmember Nackstead?
Yes.
Councilmember Askin?
Yes.
Councilmember Winger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Baisden?
Yes.
You have 6 yes votes. Ordinance 3330, 2022 is enacted.
Next item is item D8, resolution number 2023-01, adopting an alternative allocation method for the FY23 Shared Fishery Business Tax Program and certifying that the allocation method fairly represents the distribution of significant effects of fishery business activity in FMA 14 Cook Inlet area, brought to us by the administration. Pleasure of the council. Councilmember Nackstead.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I move to adopt Resolution 2023-01, request unanimous consent.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We seconded. Anybody from the public like to comment on resolution number 22?
Turn on your mic.
Thank you. Anybody in the public would like to comment on 2023-01? Thank you, Ms. Nelson. Seeing none, unanimous consent was asked for. Seeing no objection, resolution 2023-01 passes. Next, we have item D9, resolution 2023-02, adopting goals to guide the preparation of the fiscal year 2024 annual budget, brought to us by the administration. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Nackstead.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I move to adopt Resolution 2023-02 and request unanimous consent.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. We'll take it out to the public. Anybody from the general public like to speak to resolution 2023-02? Seeing none, bring it back to council for discussion. No discussion. Unanimous was asked for. So resolution 2023-02 passes. We have no unfinished business. Moving on to, did I miss something? Uh-oh. Where we at? Sorry, what item was that? Item G5. G5, hold on, sorry. I don't have it in front of me. You got it there?
Oh, sorry, G5.
G5?
Yep.
Sorry. So we have ordinance G5, correct?
Yes.
So we have ordinance number 3332, 2023, amending Kenai Municipal Code Section 3-10-070, livestock within the city limits to allow a maximum of 12 chicken hens to be kept on certain lots less than 40 square feet within the city of Kenai, brought to us by Councilmember Dothett. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Dothett.
I make a motion, we're gonna move this to planning and zoning. We're moving it off this current thing, correct?
Oh, sorry, for the clerk.
Can we, first motion we need is a motion to introduce, and it could be one motion to introduce and refer to Planning and Zoning
Okay,
Commission.
so I'll make a motion to introduce tonight, but then refer it to planning and zoning
And schedule a public hearing for
and
January 18th.
schedule public hearing and get their input before it
Yes.
comes back to us. Yes, okay.
Thank you.
So if that makes any sense at all.
So a motion to
A
introduce.
motion to introduce it tonight to us, but then to move it on to planning and zoning for their input and public hearing.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, second by Councilmember Askin.
Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent was asked for. Any objections? Seeing none, ordinance 3032, 2023 will be moved to planning and zoning for review, correct?
So, thank you. So the ordinance was introduced tonight. It'll be heard by the Planning and Zoning Commission at their meeting next Wednesday, and then it'll be back before the council. No?
Can't make it by Wednesday.
No?
It's too late.
Too late? Too late for the packet?
If I may, when it comes to a public hearing per P&Z commission, it needs to be on the newspaper at least 7 days in advance. And the meeting is next Wednesday, so it would have needed to be published today if we were to take it to P&Z next week. So the next date would be the 25th, would be the earliest that we can take it to P&Z commission.
So then it will not be back to council until February 4th.
February 4th, thank you.
You mean the 1st, right? Because February 4th is a weekend.
Thank you. I don't have a calendar, so I was rolling the dates through my
Okay,
head.
we're like whispering up here, what?
February 1st. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry for the confusion. Are we back under new business? We have no unfinished business. So now we're under new business. That brings us to item G6, action approval confirming the mayor's appointment of Kenneth Ayers to the Council on Aging for a partial time term ending December 31st, 2024, brought to us by Mayor Gabriel. Pleasure of council. Thank you, Councilmember Askin. Please help me.
I move that we confirm the mayor's appointment of Kenneth Ayers to this Council on Aging.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councilmember Dothett.
Request unanimous consent.
Unanimous consent was requested. Any objections? Seeing none, the confirmation of the mayor's appointment will move forward. Brings us to item G7. Action approval special use permit to Beacon Occupational Health and Safety for exclusive lease space in the Alaska Fire Training Center. I think this was our laydown from the administration. Pleasure of council. Councilmember Nackstead.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I move that we approve the special use permit with Beacon Occupational Health and Safety.
Second.
Thank you. Discussion?
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilmember
I'm going to
Nackstead.
request unanimous consent, but just for clarity, it looks like it's additional space from what they already have. I just wanted, there was a map in there, and they haven't had a lot of time to think about it.
If we could, maybe City Manager Ostrander give us an overview of what this is.
I will. Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden, Councilmember Nackstead. So this actually is the space that Beacon currently uses for their clinical services at the facility. So the map that you see there, that's Exhibit A, that shows the different spaces, the area that's in red there, the exclusive use space, that's the area that, as it states, is exclusive to their use. We're also charging them a certain amount for the common use space as well. This is similar to the way that we charge lease space at the airport terminal. So that's the way this is structured. Beacon has been operating that facility as both an ARF training facility and clinical services for a number of years. This actually is a special use permit that allows them to continue to operate their clinical space in the same way that they have. Administration is working on what the ARF training for the upcoming year looks like. It's going to require negotiation of a new agreement, either with Beacon or with some other entity to operate those ARF trainings in the upcoming summer. But this is specifically to the clinical space that they already utilize at the facility.
Councilmember Dothett.
So in my copious amount of times being at a Beacon with my jobs over the years, they do utilize pretty much exclusively the restrooms in that apparatus room for their UAs and other drug testing they do. Why is that not included in this?
Councilmember Ostrander.
Vice Mayor Baisden, Councilmember Dothett. So thank you for, yeah.
City Manager, I'm sorry.
Thank you for the question. That actually, right now they do continue to use those restrooms in the apparatus bay. Their long-term plan is to utilize the restrooms that are shown here for exclusive use. That transition has not occurred yet, but at some point during the term of this SUP, that transition will be made.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure we weren't giving something away for free.
Thank you. If I may too, just add a comment here. So we've had a long relationship, I think, with Beacon in this facility. Do we, and maybe this is for the city manager, for their airport manager, going forward. So this is just for this year, it looks like. Will we see another agreement when it comes to the ARF and what's going on there coming for us?
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden. I would anticipate that administration will bring something forward to you to accommodate ARF training for the upcoming season. Beacon sold in the ownership. There was an ownership change. I think it's been just slightly less than 2 years ago. And after that ownership change, they contacted the city and ultimately said that they don't like the agreement that they've been operating under for all these years. So that agreement actually terminated at the end of this calendar year. So they are actively working with the city to determine if they want to continue to provide those ARF services. And if those negotiations are unsuccessful, we'll look for alternatives. So council will be seeing something depending on whether or not those negotiations with Beacon are successful, or if we have to go out to some type of competitive process to look to fulfill those needs.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Did we get a unanimous on this? Yes. I think unanimous was asked for and presented, so the action item passes. That brings us down to commission and committee reports. The first committee is Council of Aging. Councilmember Sonart.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden. So the next meeting of Council on Aging is Thursday, January 12th at 3 p.m.
Thank you. Airport Commission, Councilmember Askin.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden. The next Airport Commission meeting is next Thursday at the 9th at 6 o'clock.
Thank you. Harbor Commission, Councilmember Dothett.
I believe our next one will be the upcoming on the 18th. I don't think we had one last night. Excuse me.
Thank you. Next commission is Parks and Recreation Commission, Councilmember Nackstead.
Thank you. Next Parks Recreation Commission meeting is in 23 hours right here. Be here. It'll be a work session this time.
It'll be fun, I'm sure. Planning and Zoning Commission is with me, and our next meeting is, I'm looking at the calendar, it looks like the next Parks and Rec is the 5th. So I guess I'll be here for that too. Beautification Committee, Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden. The beautification meeting on January 10th was rescheduled for February 21st.
Thank you for that report. That ends our committee reports. Report of the mayor. Oh,
Vice
I'm
Mayor
sorry.
Baisden. I said the
Councilmember
wrong
Askin.
date. It's actually January 12th.
January 12th. Thank you for that correction. Brings us to the mayor's report. Of course, Mayor Gabriel, as you can tell, he wasn't here. Probably would run a little bit quicker maybe if he was here, a little smoother. I do have a presentation that I want to make. I have a proclamation that I make for those of you in the public. You may know or might not know this, but this is our last official meeting with our city manager, who's been with us for quite a few years, done great work. Wanted to recognize him here, and we're going to do a lot other recognition later next week, I do believe, too. We've got some schedule for you, Paul. You've been a great asset to us, and we appreciate this. So I have a proclamation I want to read here. Hopefully I'll embarrass you a little bit, because I know you didn't see this coming. This proclamation, whereas Paul Ostrander has served as a City of Kenai manager since 2017, and whereas during the tenure as city manager, he promoted a positive workplace with innovative ideals and led by example, and whereas he dedicated himself to making the city's #1 capital improvements project for over 30 years a reality, in due in part to his leadership and engagement with Alaska Congressional Delegation, state legislation, and Governor Dunleavy, the Kenai Bluff Stabilization Project is scheduled for construction next year, preserving a significant asset that benefits the Kenai Peninsula and the state. And whereas, under the leadership, the city completed its first comprehensive inventory of all city-owned lands and created economic incentives at the Kenai Municipal Airport, which resulted in new construction and business activity at the airport. Whereas city employees under Mr. Ostrander's innovative leadership have taken part in an annual efficiencies initiative resulting in an estimated annual cost savings of $136,149 in the first 3 years. And whereas he has continuously explored opportunities, partner on projects that create civic engagement and collaboration, including the Kenai Silver Salmon Derby, a family-friendly fishing tournament that raises funds for conservation. And whereas he successfully managed the city and led employees through the COVID-19 pandemic, addressing one of our community's most pressing challenges of recent times. And whereas the city of Kenai recognizes Paul Ostrander for his dedication and hard work. Now, therefore, I, James Basin, Vice Mayor of the City of Kenai, Alaska, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby recognize the contributions made by this dedicated public official, Paul Ostrander, and I commend and thank Paul for his service to the City of Kenai and our citizens. Thank you, Paul, for everything you've done for us. Get a picture here, Paul. Thank you, Paul. And I know we'll probably have some more comments here from our other members here. We'll let them comment also. But again, I can't. I've known Paul for quite a few years. I just this morning I was thinking, I met Paul for the first time playing in the rec center, City League basketball on the fire department team. And I know it doesn't look like it, but back in the day, I could outrun Paul. No. I still remember him as being the fastest person on the court, and Tony probably can attest to that because Tony was one of the big guys that would hit people, but Paul was that guy on the court, and that was my first time actually interacting with Paul. I got to spend time with him at the borough with my time at the borough. He and I had lots of interactions and built a relationship there. So I know the hard work that he's done here as a city manager. A lot of times it's thankless. He has to deal with us up here, and we're 7 people who have individual ideals of what we think is the best for the city, and he has to try to do his best to keep those going, as well as the employees that he deals with. And I know you're loved by the employees. I know that they're going to miss you. We've got Terry in the wings waiting, and he's got to see how you operate. And I think that you've left this city better than you found it, so thank you. Now, after that, we'll move on to administration reports, and that'll be the city manager.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden. Appreciate that significantly. So a couple things I wanted to mention to council that have been going on since our last meeting. Terry and I have been spending an enormous amount of time together, and it's been incredibly valuable. And I'm really appreciative of the fact that you guys have decided to bring Terry on board as city manager, and having this overlap between the two of us. I know it's made me feel much better about leaving, knowing that Terry's going to be here to carry on, and I'm hopeful that Terry has found a lot of value in the last 3 weeks that we've spent together. I mean, despite the previous 5 years and 11 months that we've spent a significant amount of time together. But we have been spending a lot of time together, and it's been very beneficial. He did meet with the borough administration, both Mike Navarre and Max Best, as a follow-up with KPAL about animal control. I think that there is more to come on that. I think that Mayor Navarre is interested in providing some funding to help in the interim, and I think that I'm hopeful that there will be some codified changes at the borough that could help in that regard too. But I was actually sick that day, and Terry was able to go to that meeting, and I wasn't able to make it. But I know he said that it was another positive step in that direction. Terry and I also met with Angela Ramponi, who is the legislative director of Lisa Murkowski's office. Angela actually grew up around here. She's been in D.C. for about 3 years, but that position within Murkowski's office is essentially the lead of all of those legislative aides. So it's a significant asset that we've got there in Murkowski's office, and we had a good meeting with her last week. Last Friday, we also met with Justin Ruffridge, who, of course, is going to be representing our residents in Juneau next year in the House. I had a really good meeting with him. A lot of things that we shared about concerns here at the city, and he was very engaging and seemed like he was really ready to go to work. Terry and I have also been meeting with all employees this week. I think we have 11 meetings scheduled to meet with all 120 employees. So it's been busy, but it's been really valuable. And what we've been talking to employees about is the budgetary goals that council passed tonight. And specifically, 2 of those goals, we wanted to talk to them about healthcare and the sustainability of healthcare and some of the steps that I think that we made last year to position us for some additional options for employees. And then we also talked to them about compensation, which is something that employees are always very interested in. And we shared what the goal that the council established, how that's set up, and how administration is going to take that and move forward with it during the preparation of the budget. The last meeting that I actually have with Terry scheduled right now is actually Friday, and it's going to be a handoff meeting for the Bluff project. And we're going to meet with the Alaska District, both Bruce Sexauer and Ronnie Barchak, and Mr. Curtin is going to be in that meeting as well. And it's really about establishing the fact that my role now is going to be Terry's, and making sure that he knows that these folks in the district that will be working with closely to make sure that this thing happens. So again, like I said, a lot of meetings with Terry over the last couple weeks. I guess I'd like to finish with just really just to thank you. It's been a real privilege being here for 6 years. Been an amazing experience. One, I couldn't have anticipated what it was going to be like when I got here. But I've got to work with some incredible people that I'll remember for the rest of my life. I think we did a lot of incredible work over the last 6 years, and I'm not the kind of leader that typically is the one that comes up with the ideas. It's these talented people in the back that come up with ideas, but I like to think that I have the ability to recognize a good idea and then carry it out. But these folks made me so much better than I would have been without them. And I don't want to talk individual employees, but there's many, many of them, and it was incredibly fulfilling. And there's a part of it that I will miss, and parts of it that I won't miss, certainly too, but I think the city is in really good hands. I think we're positioned for great success in the future. And I know I'll look back at this 6 years as some of the most rewarding of my entire life. So again, just thank you. And I still got 3 more days that I'm city manager, so I'm sure I'm gonna make lots of changes over those 3 days. But again, just thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks, Paul. Any questions for the city manager? Councilmember Nextad.
I don't have any questions, but it seems like rather than waiting till later, anything that I want to, now, first off, Paul, thanks for showing up, being a short timer and everything. But I knew that you would anyway, and it's just a joke, of course, because, you have ethics, and I was part of the council at the time that hired you. And I knew that. I'd worked with you at the borough. I worked with you when you worked at McLean's before that. And frankly, I knew your dad back in, I know where you come from. He was, my math teacher back in '76 or '5 or whenever, and on. But anyway, I knew that you were going to be a good fit here, and we had conversations. I told you that you had there's a good team here. We needed a leader that would take these folks and help them with their jobs, and moving forward. And I knew you were the guy to do it, and you certainly did. And I've seen our city grow a lot with you, and it worked out so well, and frankly it's made the council's job a whole lot easier. It just has, and I've always appreciated your opinion on transparency. Something we've come up with. Well, how do we do this? And well, it needs to be transparent to the public, to everybody. And that is your morals, and I certainly appreciate that. There was nothing ever in my career with you that's been under the rug or hidden or anything like that. It has been all up front, and that's pretty impressive in a job like you've got, to be able to do that. And when you leave this job, you'll be walking away with your head up and whatnot, and I know that you'll have no regrets. So thank you for everything you've done and everything you are.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions for the city manager? Seeing none, thank you, Paul. City Attorney Bloom.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Basin. I don't have any comments, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
I do have a question.
Did I miss you? For city manager, for attorney?
Oh, yeah.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Councilmember Winger.
I was just catching you before you moved on.
Sorry. Sorry, I was going to move quick. Sorry.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden. Mr. Bloom, just an update, because we haven't heard anything on the appeal from that daycare that believe the Malloys were appealing, or Schmitz were appealing that. Do you know where that stands?
Attorney Bloom.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Basin, Councilmember Winger. Yes, so Christine Schmidt filed the appeal, and her opening brief is due probably in about 15 or 20 days. And at that point, as soon as I get that, I'll absolutely share it with council. And then I'll have 30 days to respond. And then she will again have, I believe it's shortened to 20 days, 15 or 20 days for a final response. And then if either party requests, there could also be an oral argument scheduled at the Superior Court. But once I get that opening brief, we'll kind of start everything, and I'll make sure and keep council informed every step of the way.
Thank you very much.
I guess I have a
Go ahead, Councilman Dothett.
quick follow-up to that. While this is still under debate and being contested, are they able to operate currently, or is it at a standstill until deliberation is done?
It's my understanding that the applicant for the conditional use permit has her state license and has been operating.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions? Thank you. We'll move on to City Clerk Sainer.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Basin. I have nothing to report this evening. Available for questions.
Thank you. Any questions for the clerk? Seeing none, that moves us to additional public comments. Are there any members from the public who would like to address the council at this time? Seeing none, seeing nobody online. We'll come back to council comments. I'll start down the line with Councilmember Dothett.
Well, I guess I'll just start out. It was a very quick amount of time on council with working with City Manager Paul there, but I just would like to say thank you for being welcoming. I know we've had meetings together over the last year or so, and everything we brought up seems like it's been addressed in some fashion, and I really appreciate the follow-up and follow-through and being very informative and upfront with everything. It's been great to work with you, and I just want to say congratulations on your future vacation and retirement, and hopefully I'll be there someday, but it's so far out I can't even imagine at this point. And I do want to say I look forward to working with Terry, and I really think there's some great things in the future with the city, and and we have a lot of local close contacts, and it means a lot to you to be working with the city, and I hope to see some great things come in the future.
Thank you, Councilmember Askin.
Paul, thank you very much for your patience in answering my questions. I really appreciate it, and you will be missed. Welcome, Terry. I look forward to working with you in the future. And I want to thank the road department. I spent 6 weeks outside with my ailing father, who's 91 years old, and we got snowed in 2 times, and it took 3 days for us to get plowed out. So I truly appreciate what you guys do. And Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Sonart.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Paul, thank you for your service for the past 6 years, and your work on the Bluff Stabilization Program. I don't think without your energy we would be to the point that we're at. So thank you. And then next question, are you going to sleep in Tuesday morning? And just a comment from one retired person to the next retired person. It'll be interesting to see what you do with your time and your energy, because you're not somebody to sit around eating bonbons. So it'll be interesting to watch what you do with your next phase. Mr. Eubank, I'm excited to have you come on board. I look forward to working with you, and best of luck for your upcoming tenure. Marion, I was glad somehow I got the notification right before Christmas to come look at the floor. I found it very interesting. I love local history and things like that. And I was thinking the other day, maybe it was there, and because my focus was on the floor, but was that piano there?
The piano?
I don't remember seeing it.
The piano, which is a small baby grand, was donated by a couple that used to live here within the last 10 years.
So had it been moved for the restoration of the floor?
That was very interesting. Thank goodness we have somebody like Tim Nixon who's been dealing with pianos for a lot of years. I went in the back room after it had been zippered up with its cover on it, and it's on its side. And I had no idea what this was. I wasn't around when the day it was moved. And it looked like, I thought it was something that was gonna be equipment to remove snow, in fact. I thought, some big snow blower. No, it was the piano this way, sitting on sideways. So anyway, it's back in place, everything's fine, been tuned, blah, blah, blah. Yep,
Okay, that is good to know.
some of the big details.
Thank you, and Happy New Year, everyone.
Thank you. Councilmember Winger.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Baisden. I'd like to wish everybody a Happy New Year. I think we had a great meeting with the Canarsie Tribal Council today. Very, very pleased to see that these conversations happened. It's something I've advocated for a very long time, so I look forward to meeting with them and mutually supporting each other going forward. And I would be inclined to meeting a couple times a year so that we can keep this momentum working together going forward. So with that, I just want to thank them for working with us and being willing to work around our schedules to meet up with us and come in here. And hopefully in the future, maybe we can see the same extension where they invite us into a work session in their facility where we can go and work with their tribal council in their area. And maybe we could swap back and forth. Other than that, it's just for us, it's a competitive sports season. One of the big ones coming up is on January 14th at the Kenai Pool. They will be hosting their home swim tournament. The reason why I'm mentioning this is the swim team here actually turns out some of the top athletes in our state. So when we go to state, we don't have 1, 2, 5, 10 kids placing like some of the other clubs, including Soldotna. We've got 20 kids. We get kids that are amazing swimmers, amazing athletes, place first, go off to Junior Olympics, they're placing first. And kids that are going off to Coast Guard. So, I mean, this is a great program. If you're not familiar with Coach Will has been a teacher, coach there since we graduated. So I think he's going on 25 years. He's been dedicated to the program, and that dedication shows over there at the Kenai Pool with the athletes that they're turning out. So if you want to come on January 14th, we would love to see people there. And I just want to wish Paul the best, and I will see everybody at the next meeting.
Thank you. Councilmember, next, Ed.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. I too enjoyed the meeting with the Canarsie tribe, and that's something I look forward to doing in the future as frequently as we can, actually. And I went to school with a number of them, so I'm going to, now that I know they're on the board, I just knew they were involved, I'll probably be reaching out to them occasionally, as friends and whatnot, and continuing kind of that relationship that I've already got. And I wanted to thank Marion Nelson. She invited me to the concrete grinding party or whatever at the Fine Arts Center. Councilmember Sonart was there, and Mr. Eubank was also there too. And we got to see the unfinished product, and I look forward to coming out tomorrow night and seeing it's all painted now, and to see what the floor actually looks like. And that'll be an interesting thing, because it's had that ugly park carpet there for forever. And then finally, on Sunday at 1:30 at the Kenai Visitor Center, Kenai Historical Society is going to have a meeting, and Dick Rigger will be there, and he will be talking about agates on the Kenai Peninsula on our beach, where they come from. He's a geologist. He's written a number of books. Fascinating guy. There's almost nothing he doesn't seem to know about these things. But if you're interested in Alaska prehistory, especially when it comes to glaciation or what that, but he'll be there specifically talking about agates, and I don't think, I won't miss it myself, so hopefully a number of you will be able to make it. That's all I have. Thanks.
Thank you. I'd like to thank the public for coming out tonight, along with staff that's in the room to help answer questions. Paul, I do have a note here that I know that we're going to be meeting with you again January 9th from 11:30 to 1:30. Council's invited to come out here and hang out. I think that's going to be the big blowout party for Paul whenever he actually leaves here. That should be fun. I'm sure there'll be some interesting things said at that time. Can't wait to be part of that. Item L, there's no executive session. There's no pending items. Having no other business before the body.